can happen every once in a while. But you're right. We're probably going to be seeing a lot of Death Knight as it's been dominating, of course, the melee meta along with Windwalker and Monk so far. But let's see what both teams have in store for us as does Gargoyle stream and PI me square off right now in the other side.
And we're off here with both teams slow falling and jumping down the left-hand side. So we are seeing the left-hand strategy from both teams similar to Obey Alliance and Golden Guardians from earlier, unlike that right-hand strategy we saw last Cup. Both teams, though, are opting to skip that first trash pull and go right into this. Actually, we're seeing the exact same strategy coming out from both teams here. This is really cool.
Yeah, so now you see both groups electing to take the American approach driving on the left side of the road.
Wait.
Exactly.
I'm not 100% sure that's it.
Exactly. All right, and so now both PI and Gargoyle are now making their way into the Ardenweald area. And do you think that trash pack and deleting it right before you go into this area seems a little bit better with slow falling? We saw this matchup earlier whenever Golden Guardians were playing Obey Alliance. What strategy between the two did you think was the fastest?
So there's definitely upsides to both of these strategies. One thing that both of these teams have set themselves up for is there is now that trash pull on that platform where they will likely go and fight it with the boss, the last boss, at like 15% health. That should be a really exciting moment if we get to that point. I think I did prefer the overall pathing of Golden Guardians, which was to not do it this way. But both teams here are pulling massively in the Ardenweald area. We have hundreds of birds all coming in here, including it looks like a Matriarch on the side of PI me. I think Matriarch's absent from Gargoyle strategy.
You can hear that Matriarch squawking.
Yeah, yes, it's sometimes indistinguishable from Tettles, but at this time, yeah, it does seem like it is the Matriarch. I think that was not the plan, though. Rentari is under so much attack here, has procced Last Resort, somehow staying alive, but you can see all those stacks of the Matriarch debuff on him. And they're going to be able to survive this, but I expect that was not part of the plan. I think that Matriarch coming in, I mean, maybe it was, maybe that was, but it came in a little bit late, which you can see how much damage it's causing to Rentari here. Does not have that cheat death available anymore as well. Metamorphosis is not available either. There's the huge damage coming out on the group from the Pride also. They are going to be able to stabilize, it looks like, although the Pride is still very high on health, and they are low on health and mana here. Meanwhile, Gargoyle finishing off that Pride, 2% behind, but they are moving on to their next pull already.
Yeah, and it could have been the hatchlings that went off that got the Pride. It could have been intentional. It's really hard to say. The hatchlings does like a call. It does a call cast that if it goes off, it kills the whole entire party. PI me, Igloo is really tapped on mana here. You actually see, I think he mana potioned there, but now the Pride is sitting at 20 stacks. All right, they're able to get that killed, and now they're making their way towards that urn pull that Gargoyle has already started. So I think that Matriarch definitely seemed like a mistake. I think I would tend to agree.
Yeah, this is a massive pull that's coming out here from the side of PI me. Gargoyle have also, it looks like, executed it with pretty effectively.
Yeah.
And they're making great use of that Night Fae dungeon ability. Of course, you don't just get that for free. You do need to have a Night Fae in your group to earn it.
Yeah. All right, so now you do see PI me doing a good job of kiting all these Elder Horns. Basically, once the mobs drop below 20% HP, Raging kicks in, and then your tank's got to get out of town. There's no good way of dealing with that. So now PI me actually does a really good job of kiting pull straight into their next pull. I feel like their pathing was just a little bit superior in that regard to where Gargoyle was, where Gargoyle killed the mobs like right on top of their point, and then like walked away to the next pull, whereas PI me was like kind of chain pulling. The only issue would be like healer mana, but whenever you still have like the Pride buff, you're not going to be working or worrying about mana too terribly much. But Gargoyle still pretty far ahead off the back of that Matriarch pull by PI me, and so now they have procced their 40% Prideful. Now PI me has entered the very dangerous range of Raging for all of the mobs that they have pulled. Their Pride is beginning to spawn, but all of the mobs will be executed here.
Rentari still just, it's so scary to be in this position
Yes.
without that cheap death available. That is such a huge pain from the side of Rentari. He not playing the cheat death trinket either, so he will die if his health reaches 0, which is not normally true for Vengeance Demon Hunters. Aikyo on the other side has access still to that last resort if something were to go wrong. They are going to be okay, though, on the side of Piami. The tank damage portion of that pull is now over. They've survived it. They will be killing this Pride. It looks like something in the order of 30 to 45 seconds now separate these teams, although Piami do have that extra 2%. Again, my suspicion is that was not intentional, though, so I doubt that they have any way to make use of that 2% later, and if anything, it may mess up their planned Pride timings if it was unintentional to grab that Matriarch.
Exactly. So now both teams are on to Dealer Zyxa. Gargoyle, again, just a little bit of an advantage, about 30% ahead on that boss right now. You do see Dr. J. Fisto coming to us live from his manor in the right-hand side of the screen, trying to make sure that his group catches back up as that Matriarch, not the greatest, but they do have a 2% trash gun advantage for it, I guess.
Yeah, they have caught up a little bit, I'd say, in terms of boss damage. They did a really good job of kiting the pull before the Pride spawned, such that when the Pride spawned, they were already basically right down here. Which it's a lot easier to move normal mobs than it is to move a Pride. When you're fighting a Pride, you want to kind of be stacked up for AoE healing, you want to be stacked in an AMZ, and moving is dangerous when there are those boasts going out. But before the Pride spawns, you can move the trash mobs that would spawn it, and that was what Piami has done with both of their, with this second Pride spawn. Ooh.
Interestingly enough, Piami caught up a lot of boss damage there at the very end. Gargoyle just started to slow down right at the very end. And now an interesting strategy. This is exactly what we saw from Obey Alliance, where they mounted up and then they clicked their thing. Okay, so nobody's pre-clicking the return to the beginning. I actually think that maybe if you're mounted up, I have a suspicion that you probably travel faster is the reason that they're not pre-clicking it or clicking it just a little bit earlier. I think that would be the only reason, though.
They do seem to be moving fairly quickly there. Can you stay mounted in this area? No. Okay.
No.
Yeah, and they're going to be running through all
Soul
using
Shape.
their movement abilities there. We have the Door of Shadows and the Soul Shapes coming out to maneuver through this little gauntlet as quickly as possible, as they'll now be making their way over towards the Mechagon wing. Of course, both teams do still have that Enraged Spirit between them and where they want to go, so that is going to be the next order of business. It's only Golden Guardians that have solved that mob with the very first urn of the dungeon.
Ooh, Mr. Mode there. Okay, so interestingly enough, you saw IQ running off to the side to grab more mobs. You don't need to face tank this Enraged Spirit whenever he's doing his Rage cast. So IQ doing a good job of trying to get the next pull set up just in advance to get everything going on. The mob wasn't in a great spot. The Enraged Spirit wasn't, but they're doing a great job of positioning it and getting everything ready in advance. Piami, though, has killed the Enraged Spirit, and now they're moving on to their next pull. It doesn't contain those Bone Soldiers and those Raptors like Gargoyle. So Gargoyle is still a little bit ahead, but Piami started to claw back even more.
And we can see a slight difference here. Even though these two teams have had the same mobs pulled, Gargoyle have elected to do it in this kind of chain pull fashion, whereas Piami have done it as two discrete pulls. And looks like they took about the same time with both of those strategies. It's hard to see a big separation coming out. Gargoyle is still in the slight lead here as they are now getting started on this defunct dental drill.
I think it really just depends on where the mask is, the Enraged Spirit is there. Because if the Enraged Spirit is definitely on top of the mobs, then of course you're going to have to play it like that. Okay, so interestingly, look at this. All the clients, the ARF, and the Dental Drill have been pulled on the side of Gargoyle. This is a really dangerous pull, and a lot of the times I would say that this pull for your tank is probably one of the most scary in the dungeon, but recently they changed how the Woof can no longer go on the tank, and now the Metallic Jaws, which is the ARF's main cast, also just does a little bit less damage. So this went from a pull that I would describe as not that doable to a little bit more reasonable with the most recent patches.
Yeah, interestingly, that change came out this Tuesday, and this time trial dungeon was done prior to that. Oh my goodness, the stun connects with the entire team there.
Oh no!
Look at this though.
Now the Pride.
Look what's happening. They're spawning their Pride here in a I think a calculated spot so that they might be able to skip it, but. Maybe that wasn't the plan. I figured that was what was happening when they moved here, so that they'd be able to skip it later. But it looks like they're just going to pull it. So I'm mistaken. The Pride is the plan for both teams here. Both teams working on their 60% Pride. And actually, Piami are now a little bit ahead here in terms of progression on the Pride. Their Pride is a couple percentage points lower.
So I think you're right. I think they did look like they were trying to get it, but one of the headless clients I think was still in combat with them. You saw Mick was crackling Jade Lightning something whenever the group was sitting on the corner. So I think they may have actually been trapped in combat and were not able to invisibility potion. But now PIME has taken a slight lead, Dratnos. It looks like they're pulling the defunct dental drill. Okay, so they're just going to, I think, meld off all of this. If I had to guess, this doesn't look like a reasonable pull. This many lubricators is not what you hope to see, but maybe this is the pull.
Yeah, meanwhile, on the side of Gargoyle, things are going a little bit more cautiously. They've invis through, and they'll be pulling 2 lubricators and 3 essential oils, or sentient oils, which cast the essential oils.
3 oil diffusers.
Yes. Oh my goodness, it looks like explosive nearly goes off there. They were able to get it just in time as they're able to make short work here, and the 2 teams are neck and neck. Both teams on this oil gauntlet at the exact same time. This would be a spot where you really don't want to get knocked off. That would be a tough way to lose an MDI game.
Would you describe it as a slippery slope?
I suppose I would, yes.
All right, so having made it through the slippery slope, both teams are now onto Milhouse and Maleficent Mana Storm, making sure that they don't kill Milhouse before Maleficent ends up spawning, because they do need his Shadow Fury to be able to stop her Chicken Barrage. But other than that, nothing too important to note about this fight. I think at this point it's just who does the most damage in between the 2 teams, and honestly, right now, I don't expect there to be a massive discrepancy between the 2, just since they are running the exact same comp.
Yeah, you can see Milhouse is at basically the same health total between these 2 teams. It is, however, a 3 percentage point advantage on the enemy forces total in favor of PIME, but it's unclear whether that was part of the plan or not, and in some cases you might actually prefer to have less count. If this season, if you gain accidental count, it can throw off all of your future Pride timings. So we'll have to see to what extent that comes to pass for PIME, or maybe this is their plan all along. If it does allow them to do the rest of the dungeon in 1 less pull than Gargoyle, then that's a huge advantage. But my suspicion is that Matriarch was not supposed to come in earlier, and the count that it's given them will be more of a nuisance than a bonus.
Dude, both Milhouse and Maleficent screaming in tandem.
Yeah, I love this fight.
All right, so now the Shadow Fury coming in for Maleficent, and they're making sure to click the bombs. All right, so here's the Chicken Barrage. This is the most important Shadow Fury. You see it on Maceton. He's going to drop the AMZ. You're going to get 1 tick of that Chicken Barrage normally, and now they're back on the Milhouse. Both groups are back on the Milhouse, and right now it's just a DPS race. I think that right now it would come down to basically any death. I feel like 1 death could separate the 2 teams right now, assuming that they're going to be doing the rest of this instance similarly. We talked about it at the beginning a little bit, and the time trial times for this dungeon were, for Does Gargoyle stream, 24 minutes and 21 seconds, and for PIME, they were 24:04. So a slight advantage to PIME, but again, I think that they had a little bit of a time loss in the Ardenweald area, but they still seem to be neck and neck.
Would you like to know an interesting fact?
Oh, please do tell.
This is the second time we've had the other side today, and both times the better seeded team actually had the worst time trial time in this dungeon compared to the other team. So even though they were ahead in the time trials overall, in both this series and earlier with Obey Alliance against Golden Guardians, it was actually the underdog that was the favorite in terms of this dungeon.
Interesting. All right, so now both teams are making their way out of the Mechagon area, going as swiftly as possible. You see the soul shapes coming through. Now those Risen Warlords are sitting there. Ooh, they accidentally...
Oh my goodness.
It looks like that wasn't intended on the side of Gargoyle, but they're going to make it work. They're probably just going to pop a...
I think this was part of the plan. I think that they're just going to run through and fire off those shadow melds that are all off the ground for the entire team. You can see IQ making sure that he is in front so that he gets meleeed rather than any of the cloth-wearing players on the team. And the Ring of Peace is going to be used to separate them. That'll give them the space they need to cast Meld without being cast on. during the meld, and that is going to drop combat. Both teams now making their way into the car wing, and this is incredible. We are 15 minutes into this game, and the two teams are neck and neck. Sigil of Misery is going to come out on the first pull for Gargoyle, and they are going to be doing a large pull back onto this stuff, whereas Piami are actually going to use the Mind Soothe technique to skip past that. And they will be moving directly onto the rest of the section here. I think I like Piami's side here. I think that they're going to do this hallway in one pull compared to Gargoyle, who still have those mobs at the very end of the hallway, right?
How much did Jack pay you to say that so that more people will invite Discipline Priests to their group?
Mind Soothe, a powerful piece of technology coming in big here for Piami. And yeah,
right.
there's all those mobs raging, but they were all nicely grouped up and stunned with the Night Bear. And Piami are going to spawn their 80% Pride. They are getting up to 85% Trash as well, so they still need to find 15% more before they can finish the dungeon. I wonder where that's going to be.
That's exactly what I was about to say. So they do have that trash pack that they have to kill in the landing, right? And they also have the Risen Spirit. But like, are they going to still kill those triple devoted ads with that High Priest? Because if they are, I feel like that pull that they just did was like pretty inefficient.
There's 2 Muezala platforms that have trash left on. Actually, there's 3, right? 3 of the Muezala platforms still have trash on them at some point. So my suspicion is that 2 of those 3 platforms are going to be where they pick up their remaining 15% count. As they do get that Pride first ahead of Gargoyle, the 2 teams finally have some separation between them, as Piami will be moving onto Hakar. This is going to be their Bloodlust, combined with the Pride to really try and shorten this fight. This fight, particularly on Tyrannical, a little bit more damage can save you a lot of time because of the nature of this fight, in that it shields itself, and the shields get increasingly large as the fight goes on. Really want to try and skip as many of those casts as possible. And every team so far has had this idea on the boss of really focusing all cooldowns on shortening Hakar. But the fact that Piami was able to do in one pull what took Gargoyle 2 pulls is going to give them a sizable advantage here.
Do you think that maybe that matriarch that we thought was a mistake was actually
that could well have been part of the plan?
Look at that! Look at the count.
85% is now equal between the 2 teams. It's very, very possible. Yeah. So maybe their idea was we'll let a hatchling pull one in late, pull a matriarch in late, or maybe they just pulled it in late naturally. I mean, it's something we'll have to ask them later. As oh no, Curry goes down on the side of Piami. As Hakar is still alive at 9% here, they should hopefully be able to get it down before it gets to its next barrier. So this shouldn't be too costly for them. Again, the pull that they've saved in this wing has been much more impactful than that death. Curry is going to avoid releasing until they've updated their checkpoint. In the other side, your checkpoint updates when you pass through the portals into or out of the wings. So they're going to wait until they walk through that portal, and then Curry will release, and he'll be right there with the group. That's an important tip, actually, for anybody looking to do this dungeon at any difficulty level.
Curry, interestingly enough, was not on Piami last weekend. Mini was on the team instead, and so now Curry, he was on 40k back in previous MDI, so he does have a wealth of MDI experience, but new to this team for this weekend at least. So 2 new subs actually coming in on this match.
Yeah. A little bit of player swapping going on as Piami are now moving on to this pull that they skipped earlier at the bottom of the stairs here, near where Muezala is currently lurking. This is not 100% if I'm not mistaken. This should only get them up to the 93, 94 range. So they will still need some more count, and my suspicion is it is going to be that trash they skipped at the very start of the dungeon that they will be attempting to fight with the last couple percentage points of Muezala's health. That is very scary, and even though they are substantially ahead on time right now, that is a really, really difficult pull that is a huge way that they could still end up losing this game.
Neither team has Bloodlust too. Notably, neither team having Bloodlust is also like really scary for stuff like that. They are going to have a lot of haste that they do get from the buff. So potentially, if they're able to kill all of the trash within that one Samdi buff, he gives you like, I don't know, some ungodly amount of haste. If they're able to kill it within that, not that scary. Once they come out of that haste buff though, pretty scary as a whole. So we're going to see how both of the teams are doing on it. Gargoyle actually pulls Muezala with all of the trash, with the depth speaker that is in front of it. So they are trying to catch up.
It's a power move.
a power move by Mode, really taking the wheel here.
It's a bold strategy, Tettles. Let's see how it works out for them as they are both now on Moizala, working on getting a couple percentage points taken care of before this intermission comes out.
Stratos, there's a 5-second death differential in favor of Gargoyle over PI me, and honestly,
it
may make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have 2 percentage points separating Moizala's health, but of course it was pulled earlier for PI me, so they will get that Shattered Reality cast, and they will get onto that trash pool earlier than Gargoyle as well. But both teams do have to deal with that trash, and oh my goodness, look at that Enraged Spirit on the right-hand side for PI me here. Dr. J is going to have to actually aggro it here. Okay, dude. It looks like he just blunk past it, and he's going to walk down to where this ad is going to be. But of course, that spirit is still going to patrol across where he is now. So you can see he's going to place his Rune of Power very carefully, such that it's as far as possible from where that Enraged Spirit's going to be. But that spirit will patrol all the way to where he is. And okay, so he's killed off the spirit. Now he's going to channel on that totem, and look at the way he's managing his positioning so that he doesn't pull that spirit. Because of course, that spirit pulls, things will get very bad for him. But despite with his combustion, he was able to get that thing dead so quickly. Very well played by Dr. J there. And they will soon be getting gripped back to the platform where Moizala lives. It's going to be the very front of the room, and here we go. Here comes all that trash with the boss for both teams. IQ starting up the pull as well. And they're going to be getting huge haste buffs to try and help deal with this trash. But it is a lot of trash, and there is still a tyrannical Moizala that is beating on them.
Yep. Again, 5-second death differential as well, in favor of Gargoyle. So we may end up having to...
Rentari goes down for PI me. They have a battle res. They send it on him quickly. Clicks goes down as well. They're going to send a battle res on him also.
This is so bad. This is so bad.
So they killed the trash. The trash is now dead. But that has cost them another 10 seconds. And even though they are ahead by 1 percentage point on the boss's health, that 10 seconds now, that's going to be really, really, really costly for them. They need to pump here, as Gargoyle have successfully dealt with that trash without any deaths. There's actually still one mob that they've left alive, but they are just cleaving it down. They are not bothered by it. They are focusing on single target. I think they're aware of just how close this one is likely to be.
Where is PI me going to get their last 2 percentage points to finish off the dungeon? Because obviously we see it on screen with Gargoyle, right? They have this Bone Soldier in melee that they're light cleaving. Please don't proc the pride during the boss kind of ordeal. Where is PI me going to get their percentage points from?
Are they going to go and kill an Enraged Spirit or a Warrior? Oh, it's maybe the two mobs at the top of the stairs?
Maybe.
Yes, that's exactly what's happening. Okay, so Iglu's pulling those 2 mobs in from the top of the stairs, and they're going to be cleaving them down at the end of this boss. But I don't think this is going to be enough, Tettles. They have to deal with all of those mobs full health bar, rather than the one that's just getting cleaved down on the side of Gargoyle. And Moizala is at the same health points. Oh my goodness, 15 seconds separating them on the death differential. PI me is lower on the boss percent, but they do have to kill those 2 mobs to stop the clock as well. One mob needs to die on the side of Gargoyle. It's already at 15% health.
Any deaths could make or break it here. Gargoyle is definitely still like very minusculely in the lead. Piami does end up downing Moizala a little bit ahead, but they have 15 seconds death differential. Now Gargoyle has killed Moizala. They've killed the final mob that they need to solidify their 100% count and take match 1.
Oh, that was coming right down to the wire. Even throughout like the entirety of that series, that setup that we were looking at, we're just trying to be able to narrow down the differences for these teams. But we do see Does Gargoyle Stream taking that victory, and that is exactly what we want to be able to see out of the new blood in the tournament here, Cyro.
Yeah, that was also like ridiculously close the entire way through, with the teams kind of going back and back, and I was going through the VOD like while I was watching the YouTube VOD as well, and behind like trying to figure out how they were making up these tiny differences, because PIME didn't have any right to be anywhere close to winning that match off the mistakes they were making, but even with those mistakes they were able to make it close.
Yeah, and it kind of goes to show the sort of continuing trend that we've seen with Dr. J's teams in a lot of respects, Stratos, where they can have such an excellent team and aggressive pulls and everything like that, but sometimes they just make a couple of mistakes that just put them behind.
Yeah, I mean, I would describe this as a clean run from both teams. Obviously, there were a couple deaths at the very end there, but besides those 2 deaths on the hardest part of the dungeon, which is all that trash with Moizala at the end, besides those 2 deaths, there was only 1 death between these teams in the rest of the run. So, I mean, I think there was an impressive degree of of consistency between the two teams, and I think that was evidenced by how often we saw them at the exact same stage of the dungeon as each other, working through the same poles neck and neck the whole time.
I actually think that Matriarch 2 and then skipping those Devoted ads and that actually allowed them to cut down on one total pull across the whole entire dungeon. So while we thought in real time that was a mistake, I think it showing that it was intentional at the very end was actually an enormous time gain in retrospect.
Yeah, that's a good point.
For PI me, I don't think it was on purpose at all.
You don't? Well, they got a good pull out of it, so I don't know. Maybe it wasn't on purpose though.
Do you have that in the replay? Let's see. What do you got?
Yeah, that's my first clip actually, because like that's what that was my initial real time response to it too. Is I saw the Matriarch coming in late, and it's like, wait a minute, you can see it coming in on the left side there, like. They had a Fear Sigil and a leg sweep, so they shouldn't have had any hatchling screams going off here. And then the whole trash pack is dead, and they're single targeting the Matriarch down while they're killing the Prideful. Like that's definitely unintended. And maybe with Big Brain Dr. J on their team, they had a way to figure out and kind of finagle something later on in the route. But yeah, PI me, that Matriarch alone put them 30 seconds behind where Does Gargoyle Stream was in the dungeon. And yeah, they brought it back with a little bit of extra damage and like more efficient pulling, but it kind of all fell apart for them at the end.
Yeah, and that's going to also start setting our sights up onto Misted Tirna side to look at how these teams are going to be bouncing back to it. And a lot of our big impressions, I would say, last week, Tettles, was just, all right, the team that does a better job on the first boss, that's able to one phase the first boss and able to go quicker on the first boss, is going to be getting a massive leg up. And we got Tyrannical, Sanguine, and Grievous coming in on this one.
I'm interested to see compositionally what these two teams are going to run, because we've actually seen, as funny as it is, Moon can play a pretty pivotal role in this instance because of the Droman and Ingram Malloc encounter and how it is on a Tyrannical 18. Moonkin allows you to kind of burn straight through that fight. For Does Gargoyle Stream, their Moonkin player is also their mage player. So maybe unless Maystein can play Moonkin, Krona is the typical Moonkin player, but they also have to have a mage. Whereas on the side of PI me, I think it makes a little bit more sense compositionally, like who's going to play what. I wonder what Gargoyle Stream is going to do in this dungeon, having seen like what teams have done in the past. Because whenever they were playing versus Golden Guardians in this dungeon last weekend, they didn't run a Moonkin. But it seems that Moonkin is almost the biggest time save in this instance.
Yep, and we've seen just how important some little mind control tech that some of the priests have been able to take advantage of. That was on Inspiring last time, if I remember correctly. So it was a little bit of like a double dip, where they're able to say, well, we're not really wanting to kill this thing anyway because it's inspired, and we want to make sure we're only killing it alone. So let's also do that while we're getting a little bit of extra damage onto Inga Malloc for the vulnerability phase. So that's going to be one of the biggest things that I'd be looking for as well. But I think from there, you're also going to be looking at, some of the Gorm pulls that we have coming forward, Drados, and how well the teams are really going to be able to control Sanguine.
Yeah, I think that managing that combination of affixes, the Sanguine and the Grievous, managing that on the boss fights and on the trash pulls. One of the things about Sanguine is that it ticks pretty quick, and if it gets you into Grievous when you weren't expecting it, right, that can add a whole heck of a lot of extra damage to a pull. So making sure those puddles are being dropped in carefully planned places, putting them such that you're not going to have to walk back over them, especially in the kind of narrow corridor at the end of the dungeon, I think that's going to be really important.
Yep, and we've seen just how easily some of the runs can kind of get set off by just some mistakes, whether it's with bolstering or whether it's with Sanguine. And it kind of goes to when these teams are doing it perfectly, you always just kind of assume, oh yeah, some easy affix to it, but the amount of time and practice and everything, I see you guys. The amount of time and practice these teams have been putting on really can't be understated, Zyro.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of time that goes into these tournaments, and we've heard some talk from the players about it, and hopefully it all pays off for them. Stop looking at me, you guys. The eyes are too much. No, yeah, yeah. I mean, it can't be understated, and that's kind of one of the barriers to entry here. It's why the top 4 teams are so good, because they've been doing it for so long. They know how to be efficient with the practice time as well. And these new teams, they're pretty good too, but they still need more time together.
But yeah, I think that's perhaps been one of the more impressive things that we've seen about Does Gargoyle stream, at least, from me personally, is because we've seen a lot of times, Dratnos, where, high key pushing teams try to transition into the MDI and it doesn't always work the way they want to, or it takes a lot of time to sort of progress. But when we look at Does Gargoyle stream, they've kind of been able to hit the ground running and be able to have a very good showing from their first week and trying to get a good one coming in right now.
I mean, it's got to be exciting from the side of Gargoyle because that there's just so much potential that remains untapped for them, right? They have so much less time in the past in the MDI format, which means that there is so much more that they can still, they haven't hit their ceiling yet. And the fact that they are doing this well with this relative inexperience in the MDI is really, really impressive. And I think that Mists of Tirna Scithe is going to be a great dungeon. I think this is probably the closest dungeon we have to the Court of Starses, the Mauve Souls, the Freeholds, the dungeons that are relatively short and can be hyper focused in an MDI setting to a couple of short bursts of really, really intense, difficult pulls. So I'm excited to see what Gargoyle are able to do here.
Yeah. Game number 2 is going to get started right now as PI Me is down versus Does Gargoyle stream as we enter into Mists.
All right, so I'm really interested again to see compositionally what the differences are going to be, because I think to me it seems like Karisu is probably going to play Moonkin for PI Me, and that makes the most sense. I'm not really sure what Gargoyle is going to do. Maybe Maystein swapping from his feral roots to the balanced supremacy and playing that a little bit, but we'll see what ends up happening, Dratnos. But yeah, I actually do like how this dungeon is so high octane and fast paced. I really like the 3 bosses, just like the 3 boss design as well.
Yeah, that was part of what I meant with the Mauve Souls and Court of Stars comparison. It is, of course, the only 3 boss dungeon in the expansion, as both teams will be getting underway, using that Night Phase skip to move left, and we see a pretty large pull coming out from both teams. Looks like a larger pull on the side of Gargoyle, though. They have 2 of those Tirnan villagers involved in this pull, whereas Piami have skipped 1 and are only fighting 1. Those mobs are difficult, and they can be pretty nasty. And they also, you really want to avoid healing them with Sanguine because they have such a large health pool.
Yes.
You can see great management of Sanguine from both teams so far. Beautiful use of the Ring of Peace.
Exactly. Unfortunately, they don't get knocked by CC or anything, but notably they do die at 20% HP. So Gargoyle is going to be able to kill them in just a moment, getting a bunch of different count from them. I wonder what they're going to elect to skip later. What does that Tyrnian villager, what does the rest of those mobs actually end up facilitating later on?
Yeah, that's a 5-point difference on count, but it took them a little bit longer to deal with that pull than it took Piami, who are already fighting these 2 brutes now before the boss. They've also got some extra trash that's coming in late into this pull, and I imagine that this is all, it's all going to get grouped up. 5 targets, a nice number here for them. They're going to be doing some serious damage, while Gargoyle also have a pretty similar idea, it looks like. Actually, it looks like they might just be fighting these 2 mobs all by themselves. Of course, Prideful is something that's in the immediate future here at 20%, and PI Me does need to kill some more stuff to spawn that Pride. All right, trash is now getting added in for Gargoyle.
Yeah, it looks like one of the mobs is actually polymorphed off to the side.
Both teams have.
Yeah, exactly.
Have done that.
So yeah, electing to CC that Soul Cleaver, which does allow, it does an insane amount of damage to Drummond and Ingram Mallock whenever that 100% damage increase does occur.
It applies a debuff that increases damage taken by 20%, which is a big deal. A big deal in that damage phase. So that's, I believe, the purpose behind leaving that thing CC'd, right? So that they can break it out and bring it in later. As both teams are now working on their Pride, you can see Piami have let that Soul Cleaver get a little bit closer, and then they've CC'd it in the area, whereas Gargoyle have left it down by where it spawns. It will come in when that CC does eventually break, and now it actually did walk up a little bit, and they've CC'd it again closer until they are ready to use it, as they are going to pull this Pride into the boss. Piami, on the other hand, they are just going to deal with this Pride by itself, and only at the very end are they moving it into the boss here. So these 2 teams, actually, I would say Gargoyle now are ahead both in count and in terms of where they are in the boss. So it looks like their opener has been slightly better here.
Yep. So now Drummond, once it does get to 20% HP, it will end up stunning Ingram Mallock, making the boss take 20% more increased damage. And with the compositions coming in from both sides, and making sure that they do have that mind control technique for the Soul Cleaver, it's assumed that the boss is going to be one-phased and just basically destroyed, even on an 18 Tyrannical. So now you see Mode casting MC with Dominant Mind there, so he's able to continue casting into the boss. And now Ingram Malik is their health is just plummeting. You see it's just absolutely falling. I wonder if they're going to be able to kill it while it's still stunned. Okay, it looks like they're going to be stuck at 5%. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
That's fine. I mean, it will still die very much on schedule here. Meanwhile, on the side of PIME, you can see they are starting their burden now on Ingram Malik. Let's see how much they're going to be able to get done here as Convoke the Spirits is coming out. Wow.
All right, that was a big time save. They actually kind of caught back up. I mean, not great time save. Like, they're still down count and whatnot. But it was definitely a little bit better than what they have before. Gargoyle now doing a very typical live style pull where you're able to tag all of the mobs on that right-hand side through that little wall area and turn this 2-pull into a 6-pack. And so, like, really good stuff on both sides of Gargoyle and PIME.
Yeah, that is a good way to add a little bit of extra count to what is otherwise a pretty small pull. There is, of course, that mob that they mind-controlled it from earlier has come in for at least PIME as well. So they're snatching up a tiny bit more count from that also. As you can see, the mobs casting that Spear Flurry, needing to be carefully kited as they are dying for that Sanguine Affix. Sanguine Healing can absolutely break an MDI run that is this close between two teams of such similar caliber here. So that's something that they really need to make sure that they avoid happening.
Okay,
any mob healing from Sanguine would be really bad.
Interesting question. Do you think that you would spend the time to unlock the Acorn checkpoint in this dungeon for an MDI setting? Or do you think it's too big of a time loss?
I noticed Dr. J doing that, and I was curious about it as well, because it does give you that checkpoint, so if you die, you respawn at the start of the maze rather than at the start of the dungeon, which does mean that a death or a wipe would be a lot less catastrophic. On the other hand, it costs like 3 globals, it has a cast bar, a confirm window, and that's time that could be spent DPSing the pack. I'm not sure either. My suspicion is it costs, what, 2 seconds? And if it does save you time, it saves you a lot of time. It's just, it only saves you time if things are going wrong, right?
Yeah, I definitely do agree. Look at what Gargoyle has done here. So they proc their Pride pretty early, but they pull it straight into the trash pack, which is, I would describe this as really efficient. We're on the side of PIME, they're going to get their Pride spawn off of this trash pack. And so
but they
now
can pull
Gargoyle,
it into their next trash pack, maybe.
Exactly, but potentially. I don't know if I would expect them to do that. That actually seems like a pretty unexpected thing with just the mobs, like the Tender and whatnot, and especially with the Stinger in the next pack that puts that circle on all the targets. But we'll see what PIME ends up doing here with theirs. It looks like they may actually be able to. Maybe they're
going for it as well.
Okay, they're actually going for it. They're going straight for it. So it's just a little bit different in terms of what the groups believe is the more efficient pack to pull the Pride into, and like where they're going to get count. I mean, this was a decision that was made at the very beginning of the dungeon with the Tyranian Villager differential, though.
Yeah, I mean, both teams and every MDI team always approaches the maze with the mindset of, okay, look, we're gated by these walls, right? We're never going to be able to pull 2 packs at the same time, except where we can pull Pride with other stuff, right? So they're always going to be trying to find ways to do that efficiently as Igloo goes down for PIME. That is going to be an instant release, it looks like. Oh, no, an instant res
battle rest
from Curry, yeah. And so they are down that battle res. Other than that, they've only lost the 5 seconds on it, so it's not the end of the world as of now. They are onto that Gorge Gullet, but yeah, Gargoyle have taken, I would say, a substantial lead at this point as they are now solidly ahead on both count and on positioning in the dungeon.
Interestingly enough, Gargoyle proc their 60% Pride here. I think that maybe Mistcaller is the next pull. After this Pride and after this pack that they have to do. So assuming that Mistcaller is the next pack or the next wall, then they will actually have Pride for the boss. Assuming not, though. Okay, so no. This route you actually do another trash pack. So PIME is going to get their Pride spawn right before Mistcaller, where Gargoyle may not have that Pride buff for the boss.
Yeah, the maze is, of course, standardized between the two teams, and it is known in advance, right? It's the same maze that they've been practicing. So they have knowledge of what the counts are going to need to be at different points. All these Prides are fully planned and fully predictable by them in this area. And you can see that is leading to them knowing when they're going to have it, as Gargoyle are now getting started on Mistcaller with a little bit of that Pride buff still remaining to do some burst damage on pull.
I would describe it as like 20 seconds left, which is actually not that bad.
Yeah.
I wonder what PIME is going to do with their pride then. Like, so
they are not
they
going to
actually got
have
it
one
at the same time.
on
they actually got it at the
Oh,
same
they
time
will,
as
right?
Gargoyle. Yeah, they will. They'll have the exact same pride as
Okay.
Gargoyle did.
Yeah, so that they'll be in position here, I think, to keep this one close. I do think Gargoyle have opened up a pretty sizable lead at this point, though. I mean,
yeah.
It's a short dungeon, so even a short 30-second or 1-minute lead is pretty noticeable in here. As the guessing game is going to come out, this is an important thing to make sure you get correct, of course. This would not be the way that you'd like to have it end in an MDI setting, as we do have the full leaf with no circle being DPS down. Let's see if that was the correct choice. It was. They are back to damaging Mistcaller.
Yeah, Mistcaller, of course. Is it 99% reduction? Is it 100% reduction?
I believe it's just immune to damage, yeah, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, regardless, the health really can't be moved once that does end up coming out. They're actually doing a really good job of CCing all these foxes to try to allow their melee a little bit more leeway. Not exactly the most important thing whenever they spawn on range, because the range can just kind of walk away from it full time, but a pretty big deal for melee. You actually saw a full moon coming in there, Dreadnought.
Yeah, full moon's a very fortunate occurrence when it does happen. It may have been a contributor to how the first boss was killed so quickly as well. That sort of thing inside a 100% damage amp stacked with a 20% damage amp can make a huge difference, as you can see. Yeah, look at these damage meters here. Maysign is just blasting on that moonkin.
It would have been better if you would have played Feral. Then people will spam cat emojis in chat, Retness.
There's a chance that might happen anyways.
Maybe. All right, Mistcaller's final guessing game, spawning at 10% HP here. Now they need to make sure that they down the correct illusionary clone. They have elected to hit into the leaf not filled, no circle. So
let's see if that was it. And it was. They've
Great
correctly
guess.
identified the right clone to go on. That's good. That's what they wanted to have happen. As Mistcaller is going to go down now, 10 minutes 20 seconds so far in the dungeon for Gargoyle. They have one boss remaining, 24% count that they're going to need to grab as well. A little bit of an RP section now where they can regenerate some resources, some mana, before this mist will come down and allow them to get to the last area. They can potentially slow fall or levitate, or I guess slow fall down here. Nope, they're just going to jump down. Oh, okay, the mode with the mount jump into levitate. Beautiful landing there, sticks the landing.
Very elegant.
Yeah, cast that power red shield and then mounts back up. They're going to imprison and run past that first 3-pack of mobs. It's not a difficult pack, but it's kind of inefficient, and it's hard to drag it quickly into other stuff. So they've left it behind, and they are just going into these 2 massive pulls. This is going to be a very crucial test of their Sanguine management. Sanguine being dropped here can be really, 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 really bad. And there are mobs that don't cooperate and stand still for a while. So they're going to need to plan ahead here as they move, as these mobs start dying.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually a pretty scary pull. They have the Pride spawn far away from the rest of the pack as well. These acid gullets are still alive, which put these like green circles on party members. You can see it on screen there, the acid globules, and it does like pulsing damage. They're very dangerous, especially during the Pride. And also on top of that, they do also have those green puddles still spawning as well, which you saw Krona had to dodge out of the way of that green puddle while having that Prideful lines on him, which moving the Prideful lines typically is not advised. But for that situation, you just like have to go and hope that you don't stun a party member. But it looks like Gargoyle is now just has the Pride at 40% HP left to deal with. This is looking pretty safe for them compared to what they just had a moment ago. Now inside of PI doing something very similar. I don't know when they're going to proc their 80% Pride, though.
Yeah, Prides are noticeably much more deadly when this Grievous affix is ticking as well. And that is something that teams are going to have to deal with in this Mist. So they do have to be a lot more careful than potentially in other dungeons. It's a lot harder to fight Prides with stuff, although we did see the team successfully pull that off in the maze section as we have a cage coming out and they're now skipping through.
Yes. So they're going to pull all this trash into the boss, which makes sense. But notably, they're at 89% enemy forces count, which is dangerous. However, with that cage, I have a strong suspicion that will allow them to get at like 99% enemy forces count, and then that one caged mob will taper in whenever that banish expires.
Yeah, they might even
at,
re-CC it and then
exactly.
break it and bring it in at the very end. That'll allow them to skip that very last pry to the dungeon. They certainly don't want to fight it in the middle of this boss, especially with Grievous active. As you can see, all these mobs are now being killed. This is where it's going to be a crucial Sanguine moment. Tredova needs to not get any ticks of Sanguine. It's okay if the other mobs get a little bit of healing, although obviously preferable if they don't. And look at this movement coming out from IQ.
So
Great positioning there is going to stop any Sanguine healing coming out on Tredova. Meanwhile, on the side of Piami, we have some players down.
Yeah, that's actually really, really bad for Piami. At this point, Gargoyle is incredibly far ahead, 99% enemy forces. Interestingly enough, the reason that they Ring of Peace those mobs back is so Maystein could get a full Convoke off without hitting a bunch of random trash mobs. And you see, like, he's topping the damage meters because they allowed him to get like a full Convoke with all of the CDs straight into the boss.
Yeah,
and then they
you
pulled
could
the
see
trash
him
in
moving
later
as well.
on.
He moved to the far side of the boss so that he was out of range of any of the trash mobs, and all of those Star Surges were just going directly into Tredova. Yeah, great.
That's
little
a good
playing
optimization.
around to the Moonkin. It also grouped up all the mobs so that they would be, grouped up nicely. Oh my goodness, Maystein pops into that bear form, doesn't get hit, but just wanting to be on the safe side there. As you absolutely were correct, they are at 99% count. Maystein is now going to disengage away to break those links, and he is on the side where you can see that mob paralyzed just off at the far right of the screen. It's now been broken out. It's coming in as Tredova crests 20% health. They will start cleaving it down here at the very end. And this has been a textbook miss from Gargoyle. 0 deaths in their run so far, despite a lot of very ambitious and difficult pulls going very well for them. I mean, this has just been great play from this team.
Yeah, and now they're continuing to just like cleave off of Tredova, doing a little bit of damage to the Acid Gullet. It's the final mob that they need to have die for them to hit 100% enemy forces count. Whereas on the side of Piami, I think that they have like probably 2 of the Hornets, if I had to guess, or something like that, just patrolling around. But it doesn't really matter. Does Gargoyle's stream, finishes off the Acid Gullet, finishes off Tredova, and actually hits the 2-0 over Piami.
That's right, and it comes down to that Sanguine management, is what we were talking about before. When everything goes well, it looks like it's just a complete breeze for them. But does Gargoyle stream having some fantastic control throughout this dungeon and getting that 2-0 victory over Piami on this one, Zyro?
The entire time I was watching that dungeon, I was wondering if they were going to be able to keep going for these ridiculously aggressive pulls, and I was just amazed every time. This team looks like a complete 180 from last week, right? They were already looking pretty good, but